All right, shalom, 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 brothers and sisters. I'm back again, and I'm on this subject of the name, brothers and sisters, because many people don't really get it. Why is the name so important, right? Because so many people think, oh, it doesn't matter, doesn't matter what you call him, he understands, right? But see, let me just deal with something right quick, right? A name is an identifier, right? For example, if you tell somebody you're in Baltimore, right, the assumption could be, and it might be a good assumption, but it could be a wrong assumption, right, that you're in Baltimore, Maryland. You could be in Baltimore, Mississippi, or Baltimore, Ohio, or Baltimore, Massachusetts, Baltimore somewhere else, right? So the name is the identifier. And that's the reason why the name is important, because the name identifies, right? Whether it be a person, a place, or a thing, right? It's a noun. A noun is a person, place, or thing, right? So when you change the name, you lose the identification, the location, right? The name tells you where you are. It tells you who you are. It describes what your nature is, your history, your origin, right? And so when you go to a town, and let's just say a town is named Sycamore, right? People stop and ask the question behind why the town is called Sycamore, right? Most in general, whenever a town is named Sycamore or given a name, something in the history of that town gave that town a name called Sycamore, right? What could have been had sycamore trees, could have been a place where everywhere you look was sycamore trees. Sycamore trees grew there pretty easily, or sycamore trees, something could have happened with regards to sycamore trees, right? So now, let's stick with that for a minute, right? Now, when you go off into naming, for example, Main Street, right? Somebody say, where do you live? Main Street. Main Street where? What is the identifier? Main Street. There's a whole lot of main streets. So how do we identify the main street where you live, right? You give the specific exact location. So when you give the Most High's name, you are giving the specific exact individual or person, or Elohim, if you will, that you are making reference to. So when you use the generic title God, as so many use, you lose the identification of who you're talking about. Now, the assumption could be, right, that we're talking about the creator of heaven and earth. I mean, it's a safe assumption. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's true, but it's a safe assumption to say when you say God, you're talking about the creator of heaven and earth. Not always, right? Because you could be talking about Allah, or you could be talking about Buddha, or you could be talking about Confucius. You could be talking about a particular individual that you call God. You could be talking about, in Kemet, when you say God, you could be talking about an individual person or a nationality of people, right? So names identify who you're talking about. That's why it's so important. In Joel chapter 2, he said, in the last days that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, my sons and daughters shall prophesy, old men shall dream dreams, young men shall see visions, right? And he said, and it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name, right? So how do you identify this person you're calling on? If it's okay if the name doesn't matter. If it doesn't matter if you say God, or in modern vernacular now, everybody prays and they say the Lord said, right? Okay? There are so many Lords. Apart from just Lord being originating in Canaan, which was ascribed to the Canaanite deity Baal, or as you know, Baal. Also, Lord, you have in England, you have the Lords of England. Pick one, right? So when you say Lord, I mean, it's not identifying who you're talking about. You might say, well, brother, most people know when I say the Lord who I'm talking about. Well, it's a safe assumption. But the reality, well, the most important thing, brother, is that he knows who I'm talking about. Right? Well, the reality of the matter is this. If the creator of heaven and earth gave the first prophet of the descendants of the children of Israel, I say it that way because there were other prophets before him. Enoch was a prophet. Abraham was a prophet. But if the Most High gave the prophet of Israel, Moshe, who the world calls Moses, right? If he gave him the name, then obviously it's important. The name is important because if he gave him the name, then he wants the whole world to know the name. What his name is. His name, he chose, right? Or he reserves the right to define who he is. And who gave us the right to redefine the creator. So when we substitute the creator's name for the Lords and the gods and the Christs and all the other additives to go with that, we have now redefined. We have redefined the creator. You don't have the privilege to redefine the creator. He gave us his name, and his name doesn't change until he decides that I am going to give you a new name. But because, see, the Most High reserves the right
the speed limit is
to rename if he chooses to, or to surname, right? Because why? He's the power, right? So if he's the power and he reserves the right to name and rename, then he can name himself whatever he wants to. But if he says, my name is Yahuwah, this is my name forever, then you better call him by the name that he told you to call him by and drop all these other substitutions and additives. And with that, I say shalom.